Hello and a very warm welcome back to Autism Unpacked. I'm your host, Rosie Gilmoss. Throughout this series, we're going to be exploring the many aspects of autism by speaking to some experts and those with lived experience. So whether you're a parent on this journey with your child or you're simply interested, join me and I'll have some big conversations and get you the answers you need. Today, I'm delighted to welcome to the show from Options Autism, Ollie Masters and Kelly Guthrie from the Futures team. They're going to be talking to me a little bit about what makes their careers advice different. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
What is the Futures team and why is it different? Options Autism's Futures team supports a wide range of young people. But how do they do it? And why is their approach different?
So I think the best way to start would be, Kelly, would you tell me a little bit about the team, what you do and how you support the young people in your care?
Yeah, so we are really bespoke compared to what you might expect I'll use the terminology, career service to be. For a start, we don't actually ever use the terminology careers, we use futures. So we are looking at the whole future of that young person. So as you said, it's a very holistic approach. We're taking into account everything, independent skills, mental health and well-being. And yes, we do look at the next steps and jobs, careers and futures for that young person as well. So we were initially created under a need for a very large gap in the market. So there is this compulsory element of having a qualified career service within schools, and absolutely we want to meet that, but we need to do that in a way that is meaningful and impactful for our young people. We need to do that in a way that suits where they are in their life journey. So that is very, very different dependent on the student that we have. So we are really, really lucky at Options Autism that we have a team of very skilled and very specialised people who are dedicating their time to making sure that these young people make informed choices on their next steps and really have that whole person experience to making those decisions and making sure that it is right for them at the time.
Because so much of traditional careers advice, or futures advice, will be geared particularly towards neurotypical children as well. And the expectation that the children will follow this very prescriptive path, they'll do school, college or university and then go into a traditional job. And of course, this isn't suitable for a lot of the children that you work with. And Ollie, you yourself are autistic, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
So your experience of the education system, is that what made you want to work in this area?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people who go into working in the careers advice sector have come into this sector because of bad careers advice themselves. I think pretty much all of our team have all come into this because at some point or another we've received really bad careers advice and we want to make sure that other people aren't put into that same situation again.
And actually, would you mind telling me what? Because I know that you received some particularly poor careers advice when you were younger.
Yeah, so I as I say, being autistic, I really struggled within mainstream education in general. I was in mainstream secondary schools throughout. And I had a meeting set up with the careers advisor who was attached to our school. And he found out prior to coming along to the session that I was autistic. And throughout the session, I was answering the questions as best I could. And he repeatedly made comments saying similar things like, oh, but remember, you don't have to work because you're autistic. It's okay for you not to work. Don't set your expectations too high.
Wow.
Remember, you can just volunteer, and that's an okay thing for you to do.
So that's already massively limiting what a child, because you were a child presumably at the time, limiting what they can aspire to be. And I know that the work that you're doing is the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I spend a lot of my time with our young people who throughout their lives have been told similar things, that they all of the things that they are bad at or they're not very good at. They've received this autism diagnosis or ADHD diagnosis or anything like that with all of these things written on that diagnosis that are all things that they can't do. And so part of what we do here is actually to try and support them in understanding what their strengths are and how they can advocate that to other people and sort of that their future is a positive place for them.
Learning to dream big. Support for neurodivergent individuals begins at a very young age, but there's no better time to dream big.
We know, don't we, that neurodivergent people are capable of changing the world if they're given the right opportunities. I like to use the expression the right runway to fly from, because not everybody fits into this kind of very cookie cutter mould. Kelly, what ages do you work, what of children do you work with, or young people?
So our schools do start very, very young. We do have sort of primary age young people. For our work particularly, we start as soon as they reach secondary school. So what would be your year 7 young people? Because this is the stage where that imagination is going. And sometimes, and I found from my experience, you're quite limited in understanding the future around the people that you know, the people that are in your smaller unit. And there is no better time to get these young people to dream big, to get them to really think about the world out there and what they're passionate about and what they're interested in, and really help them to understand who they are and what they could be. And we never ever say want to kind of leave that to the later years. I know typically within mainstream schools, it's kind of year 10, year 11 that we're starting to have these conversations where every young person, no matter which setting background they come from, would really benefit from learning how to dream every dream at a very, very young age and really sort of reach to aspire what they want to be in life.
And Ollie, what sort of careers are the young people going into? What have you got any sort of really unusual examples of?
Oh, that's a good question. I love just the stories that all of our young people share about what they want to do and how they want to do things. I think my favorite young person is current, that I was working with a couple last year, I think it was going into working in a chocolate design role in Cadbury's. So he was planning to move to Birmingham to go designing chocolates for Cadbury at Cadbury World, essentially. And so we were supporting him in getting into working as a chocolatier and creating all of these interesting designs and all the rest of it.
That's
Nothing's off
amazing.
the table.
It's fantastic.
It's that, and that's the great thing that I've said 100 times that I wish I knew what was out there when I was younger. We've had students that will say, I've got one young lady who wants to make saddles for horses. And she wants to create the designs on saddles for horses. And that's what she's doing. I've got a young lady who's interested in taxidermy. That's what she's doing. And nothing is ever off the table. Like, nothing is ever too crazy or too out there that we can't find a way to make them explore their passions and their dreams.
Amazing.
And that's, it's so far from where you would expect to go. But, everyone wants your role in our schools at the moment. Everyone wants to be a podcast
Oh, do
host.
they?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
I shall have to protect my job.
We've got a lot of budding YouTubers and a lot of budding, and these are the roles that, again, a lot of young people are told there's no career, there's no future in that. And, a case and example for yourself here that absolutely you can thrive and you can make your way in any environment that you want to be in. And that's something that we really enjoy, and especially through Options Autism, we have something called the Dream Big Trust, which helps our young people to dream big. It gives us the ability to really explore and gain great funding and opportunities for young people to do those things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do.
And do you procure work experience for them as well? Is that what part of the project is?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. So our relationship building with providers is key to everything that we do, and it's not so much that we will just give them a phone call and ask them to take a young person. It's all about then us sharing our expertise with that provider, making sure that they really understand how to get our young people the most out of that opportunity, but how to get them the most out of that opportunity as well. And so many of our work experience come with a job offer at the end.
Oh, wow.
So many of the employers who maybe at the beginning were quite apprehensive of taking a young person with autism are getting nurtured and supported to working with our young people. And so many, at the end, we want this young person. We've had apprenticeship offers, we have job offers. And it's fabulous to not just see how our young people thrive, but watching the community and employers seeing the fantastic capabilities and benefits of working with our young people. And it's such a mutual win at the end of the day for both parties.
So actually, quite a lot of what you're doing is actually advocating for autistic people in the workplace.
Massively.
Because a lot of employers may believe that they're going to have to make an awful lot of adaptations, whereas actually it's often not that severe or that intense. It's just some very minor alterations.
What does a successful guidance session look like? Traditional guidance sessions often don't work, as the team can testify from first-hand experience.
And I'm thinking now of you, Ollie, and
Yeah.
how you perhaps have the conversations with the young people that you work with, because I'm guessing that opposite each other across a desk, lots of eye contact, it doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So what sort of strategies do you employ to get them to work with you?
So I rarely do an advice session in that format that you've just described. I rarely do a session where I'm just sat opposite a table from a student, where I'm going to ask a list of questions, they're going to answer them, and then we're going to provide some guidance at the end. That sort of traditional style careers advice doesn't really work within a lot of our settings. And quite a lot of the time we're adapting to the needs and the environments that the young people are comfortable in. Because ultimately, from my perspective, I want to build trust with that person. So where someone might have maybe 2 careers guidance sessions in their whole secondary level education, maybe one before 16 and one before 18, we have the opportunity every single half term to go in and see them.
Wow.
And so I've done careers advice sessions in the weirdest of places, and it's fantastic. I've done sessions out on mountain bikes with students where I've physically gone out and ridden with them, and we've in our stops, in our breaks between mountain biking, we've had our careers conversations like that. I've had them underneath cars when we've been working on servicing cars and things like that as part of their automotive courses.
I'm glad you clarified the last bit.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. We go out on walks in the local countryside. I'm from Devon and support schools across the southwest. So we have lots of opportunities to go and do loads of walks on bridle paths and country lanes and out by the sea. I took a student crabbing a couple of years ago at Dartmouth Harbour. So just sat catching crabs instead of traditional sat doing an interview, a careers interview.
And actually, for any young person, that sort of one-to-one conversation can be quite intimidating. And when I was young, my mum used to take me out for a drive in the car because you can't get out. You haven't got to look at each other.
That's it.
And that's where we'd have the kind of big chats.
I was asked to sort of reframe what a successful careers guidance session looked like. I was recently part of a conference and we were looking at all education as being careers education. And as part of that, I was trying to work out what a successful guidance session looked like. And so I asked my students, I was like, can you help me with this? And I regularly, my students support me in doing the things I do because I feel like they're the ones who are impacted. So I asked them, what do you think is success in a guidance session? What does it look like to you? And the first person thought about it and he went, well, you make me feel safe. And because I feel safe, I can talk about my future. And I was like, well, that in itself, that single sentence to me is what a successful guidance session actually is going to look like for our students. That individual feels safe enough to actually have a ridiculously scary conversation about their future, that even neurotypical people struggle with talking about their future, let alone someone with that sort of whose understanding of where they are and where they're going to be is sort of potentially limited by this script.
Encouraging change. The world is evolving, and while barriers remain, embracing change and leveraging technology can transform futures, helping young autistic individuals make their way in life.
We're seeing now a lot of technological advances in terms of recruitment, in terms of interview techniques, and in terms of careers guidance. Are you able to employ any of those in your work?
Absolutely. And in everything we do, I mean, Options Autism is very forefront in technology, and we do integrate that into our guidance sessions. We do make sure that the schools are allowing us to do remote sessions as well as face-to-face. And for some of our students, it's just a case of they sit next to a member of staff, they turn the camera on for 2 seconds, they turn it back off. It may be that they type in the chat box. We get them used to Teams, we get them used to Zooms, because unfortunately, that's the way the world is going. We are a very, very digital planet now, and we need to move towards that. Within our schools, we do use technology in a lot of what we do. Unfortunately, we have found this a little bit of a challenge, and we are trying, we've got a fabulous tech team, we're trying to kind of adapt things that are out there to make them work for our young people, because it still is unfortunately the case that all of this technology and these innovations are made, and young people with additional support needs are kind of at the bottom of the list of when that thought process goes into it. And we've trialed products and we speak to companies and they're not suitable. And usually the response is, oh yeah, we were thinking about making it suitable for young people with autism, but that'll come in the next design round, or that'll come in.
And I'm thinking now as well, what about somebody who is non-verbal? What happens then if you've got a job interview? How can they go and do an interview? Have you any experience of this?
We've had a lot of barriers and a lot of conversations with employers, and I travel a lot to different conferences where I speak to some very, very big organisations, some national, global organisations whose policies, procedures, ways of doing things in terms of recruitment is very archaic. Mm-hmm. They are expecting you to sit 45 minutes for an hour, have a two-way conversation, answer unprepared questions on demand quite quickly. And it's not truly a measure of your capabilities to do that job. Mm-hmm. And I've worked in particular quite recently with a young person who has a diagnosis of autism, is nonverbal, is phenomenal at technology, absolutely phenomenal. And would be an asset to any organisation, did some work experience and was closing off projects so quickly that he was just, he was so independent and able to kind of act by himself that this organisation would have loved to have taken him on. But his dream was to work somewhere else. And the company we approached was a very well-known gaming design company who wanted him to go to a panel interview where he would answer questions for stage 1. Stage 2, he would be given a project. So I had a conversation with them in which I explained that if we could give him the project, you could see what he could do. I feel you would make that decision because he is, he's incredible for any company to employ. But they wouldn't move past the interview stage. It was, bluntly put as, if you can't interview,
you can't do the job.
You can't do the job.
So short-sighted. Because I don't imagine he was going to have to sit in front of many panels doing the actual job.
The role was actually a work-from-home position, which was suited for this young person. So it would mean that he wouldn't be in an office environment. He wouldn't be having daily meetings and communications and things that he would need to have the face-to-face conversations with. It was a very independent role once we got past the interview stage, but we couldn't get him past the interview stage. And, we see this a lot in any recruitment process. We have young people who are very passionate, very creative, very artistic, and yet job adverts are asking for GCSEs in fields that are irrelevant, potentially like science. And it's putting in those barriers for any young person, not just our young people, for any young person that doesn't need to be there. And I would love employers to really think outside the box when they're recruiting, to do work trials, see how that young person actually works at the job that they're employed to do, not if they can answer questions kind of on demand that are not really as relevant in the long term. Look at the qualifications you're asking for when you're employing a young person, because these are barriers for the next generation. Every young person is going to face. And
actually, when you describe the work experience opportunities and how many of those young people are being offered jobs, you're actually kind of bypassing that panel-based interview process and going directly, hit the ground running into the job and proving that they can do that.
Absolutely. And it's not all negative out there. I have met some fabulous employers who really, really understand and embrace change and differences, and Ollie has made the comment many a times that sometimes it's neurotypical people that struggle with change.
Stand by it.
Struggle with making those changes. And you know, it takes, we have some very, very, very forefront employers who really understand what it means to be disability aware, to be able to employ people and make reasonable adjustments and make adaptations, and what that truly means. And for our young people, it's the difference between success and barrier. And you know, it is a lot of the times things that can be adjusted.
Well, it's the difference between success and the advice that you don't need to work because you're autistic, which you received. How did your autistic traits manifest in school? Because I'm thinking, you know, exam settings, loud classrooms, transitions into, you know, from lesson to lesson. All of those things are pretty overwhelming anyway. And for an autistic young person, even more so. Would you care to share with me a story from your exams?
Sure, yeah. So it hasn't really been since I started working with Options Autism that I've truly understood what my characteristics are and how I can be supported in coping with them. But I didn't realize that throughout a lot of my sort of school, I was seen, and I felt like I was this troubled child or a problem that school had to deal with for some reason. And the first time I remember doing a real exam, so not a mock exam, I walked into the exam hall, and the clock that they were using to measure the time for the exam was a ticking clock. Now, I now know one of my characteristics that I really struggle with is sensory overload, especially around repetitive sounds. So a ticking clock in an exam room, I could not hear myself think. I don't like repetitive sounds at the best of times, let alone in a pressurized scenario where I'm forced to stay quiet and sit in one place and all of these things. And I quite politely asked the exams officer if the clock could be removed or a different one that was silent could be put in, because I was really struggling and I really wanted to do well in that exam and in education in general. And I was essentially told life wasn't fair and to deal with it myself. And so with my thought process is probably not quite being where they were supposed to be at that point, I did deal with it and I punched straight through the clock.
This is not a recommendation for anybody listening.
Yeah, it was not ideal. And I completely understood that it was the wrong thing to do at the time, but I had no other way of understanding and navigating those feelings. And so I dealt with it the way I knew, which was to make that stop. I got excluded after that, was sent home. My mum was rung, being told essentially that I had been kicked out of an exam and that I needed to think about my behaviour before I came back into school the following week. And on my way home, I was really upset. I had to walk home. And so I walked into a shop and purchased a silent clock off my own back, because I thought, well, if I've broken this, I fully understand that I have done something wrong. I'm going to correct that. So I bought the clock, took it back into school the following day and said, I am sorry, genuinely sorry that I broke the clock. Can I solve the problem with this, please? And I was told that wasn't the point, and that I needed to go home and serve my expulsion, before coming back, and I wasn't allowed to retake that exam.
That sounds really, really tough, really tough. And I'm thinking now about the work that you do with young people who'd be around the same age that you were then, and how much of a difference the support that they're getting now might have made to your life.
Oh, it would. I think I would have been in a very, very different place. I really struggled both with education and with sort of people of authority in general for a lot of my life, because it was always sort of these individuals were there to catch me out or there to stop me from doing something. So education never interested me, other than I know I needed to do it for some reason. But bad careers advice and then individuals not supporting me meant I completely fell out of love with education and stopped wanting to learn. Yeah. It was really, really quite tricky, and it took me a very, very long time to build trust in myself and in education professionals in order to get back into education again.
That's all for part 1, but don't miss part 2 when we'll dive deeper into creating fulfilling futures for autistic young people.